Hello everyone, so welcome to today's video and we will continue with our Python Pandas tutorials. And in this video today, we will talk about Pandas series data type and Pandas Dataframe data type. So these two data types are the fundamental building blocks of Pandas and we will slowly understand it. And first we'll understand what these are, and then we'll also use a real world data set which we had discussed about in our last video. So the Stack Overflow developer survey data set, and we will be applying whatever we learn on that particular data set. So just one small change from the last video. So in the last video, I had downloaded the 2021 dataset, the Stack Overflow dataset, but I would like to work with 2020 data. So in my data folder here, so I have also downloaded the 2020 data here. So I will also put a link in the description where you can download this particular dataset. So for the 2020 data, and the schema here is better than the 2021. So it's much simpler and it will be better for these tutorials. We'll be using this 2020 dataset instead of 2021. So first we will just open our Jupyter notebook. So we can go to the terminal. So either you can open the terminal and then you can go to your folder, or here I have just opened my terminal at this particular folder. And when I want to launch my Jupyter notebook, then you can just write in a Jupyter notebook. So let's start with a fresh Jupyter notebook here. So the first thing we want to do is import pandas as PD. Okay, and first let's just download our data set. So read that particular data set, and then later we will discuss about Pandas series and Pandas Dataframe objects. So what we want to do is we want to read a CSV file, right? So what we do is, so you can just write df is equal to pd dot read underscore CSV, and we need to give in the file name here, right? So I want to download the 2020, so you can also press the tab button, right? And then it will just automatically complete it. And we first, let's say, want to read this data set here. So we get this, and if we want to have a look at what this data frames does, what this data frame has is, so this data frame has, so for every row, it's a response by a respondent, and for every column we have a question which was asked in that particular survey. Okay, so if we want to know how many rows and how many columns are there in this particular data frame, so it's already written here, there are 64,461 rows. So there are these many responses that they had, and there are 61 columns. Okay, so this we could have also just done it like this. So df.shape, so this gives you rows and columns. And one more thing which we can do is, first we can just have a look at, so df.info. Okay, so what this gives you is, it gives you all the different columns here. So these are the different columns, and it gives you what data type is that particular column, and so on. So this is the info, and now the other data set which we want to read is the schema. So the schema, what it does is that it explains every question here. So if you want to learn like what this age is, right? So what was the question asked in the survey, then we need to read this particular data file here. So pd dot read underscore CSV, and then again data 2020 data, and you can always press the tab button and it will give you this suggestion. So we want to read about this schema. Okay, and let's say schema underscore df. So it consists of this column. So it's every column here. So respondent, main branch, hobbyist, and then it explains what that column is for. So respondent, and then question text. So randomized respondent ID number, hobbyist, do you code as a hobby, and so on. So it explains every column. So what was the question asked? And we can do the same thing for schema underscore df dot info. So we just have two columns, column and question text, and both are objects, meaning that they are strings here. Okay, so this is the data set that we are going to play around. And so now let's first try to understand what is a pandas series object. Okay, so the way you can think about it is, so it is just a list of data, or it is just a one-dimensional array of indexed data. So when I say indexed data, that is a very critical thing here. So for example, let's say first I just make a list. Okay, so a list of, let's say, some player's name. So let's say we have Virat, we have Rohit, we have, let's say, Messi, and okay, for example, let's say we have these three players here. Okay, so this is just a list, right? So if we check the type of this particular data here, so type of player, so this is just a list. Okay, but now let's say we just make a different data. So we make a series object by pandas series object. So we'll see the difference. So pd.series, and then we pass in the same list, let's say. Okay, so we have Virat, we have Rohit, and we have Messi, right? So this is our data. Okay, so now already here you can see that it's displaying in a bit different way. So here we have just a list here, but we have the list here. So we have all the data here, but we have an index associated with it. So about the index, we will discuss more in our upcoming videos. So for now, the way you can understand, so first let's just check the type of this particular data here. So it is a series object. Okay, so pandas core series, so it's a pandas series object. So now what you would say is, what's the difference, right? So the players here, for example, if I want to access this particular element here, then I could have just written players 0, right? So it gives me Virat, and the same thing here we can also write like data 0, and this gives me Virat, right? So what's the difference? So the difference is that we can clearly, so we can change these index here. So we can specify what the index should be. So let's say if I do this once more, but now I want to change the index. Okay, so I want to give the index, let's say for here, I want to have, let's say, player 1, player 2, player 3, and so on. So I can write player 1, player 2, player 3. Okay, so now if I do it, then this data has, so this particular index here. Okay, so this there's a few details that we need to learn. So we will learn that later, like how to access these elements. So data.lock or data.ilock and so on. But for now, what we can see is that if we want to access Virat, then if I just write data 0, then I will still get Virat. Okay, but what I can do is I can also write this particular index here. Okay, data player 1. So then this gives me Virat here. So here what we have, it is just a one-dimensional array of data, but one-dimensional array of indexed data. So there's an index associated with it, and we can control this particular index here. So we can specify what this index can be and so on. Okay, so we can also check it like this. So let's say I just want to check what are the values in this series object. So data.value, so it will give me a list of all the values. And if I want to just check the index, then it will give me all these index that we have here. So this later we'll see that it will be very powerful in having control over this index. So next what we can do is we can also think of this series as a specialized dictionary. So let's say we just make a dictionary. Okay, so data is equal to, so let's say we continue with this. So let's say Virat, And then we also give like what sport do they play. Okay, so for example, Virat plays cricket, so Rohit, he plays cricket. So this is just a dictionary, right? So if you don't know what a dictionary is, then you can also look at my basic Python video. So there you can know what a dictionary is. So it's just that this particular index here relates to this relates to this. Okay, and then we had Messi, and this is, let's say, football. Okay, so we have this particular dictionary here, right? So if I just do data, then we have this, and if you check the type of data, then it's a Python dictionary, right? And the way we can access any data, so we just give here, it's a data Virat, then we get cricket, right? So now what we can do is, so let's say instead of just a dictionary here, let's say we make it a Python series. Okay, so data is equal to, so we have this dictionary here, and we just give here pd.series. Okay, so now what will happen is that it will take these here, Virat, Rohit, Messi, as the index, and this will be its value here. Okay, so if you check in type of data, then it's a series object, and the index here is the name, and the value here is the whatever sport it is Virat plays, or whatever sport Rohit plays, and so on, right? So you can think of it like a dictionary as well. So if you want to access the data of Virat, then you can just write data Virat, then you get cricket. Okay, so this is one way to do it. So there are also so we can also access multiple data at the same time. So let's say I want to access from Virat and Rohit, let's say, so Virat to Rohit. Okay, so we can get these two data, or for example, let's say I want to access all of it, so Virat to Messi, right? Then we can access all of them. Or let's say if I want to access just Virat and Messi data, right? So data, and then we can pass in a list here, so Virat and Messi, right? So we can access these two particular data here. Okay, so these are the different things which we can do, and later we will also discuss in more detail about how to access. So the better way to access is using data.lock and data.ilock, but we will discuss that thing later. Okay, so just to summarize, so the different ways we can build a Python series is, so you can just pass in a list, right? So let's say A, B, C, and so on, right? So the way it works is pd.series, and then you pass in the data and you pass in the index. Okay, and this index is an optional argument, so if you don't give the index, then it will just automatically do from 0, 1, 2, and if you pass in a particular index, then it builds up a particular index, right? So here we just had this, so we have 0, 1, 2, but let's say we build it, so we have a list here, again A, B, let's say C, but now let's say we just give some particular index. Okay, and this index does not need to be a string, so it can also just be any numbers. So let's say 2, 3, 1. Then we have this particular index here. So now there will be a confusion here, right? So if you want to access this particular element here, so do you write like this? So if I say this as data, right, then so if I want to, so if I write data, let's say 1, right, then it gives me C, right? But if someone would think that this particular index here 0, 1, 2, so it should have worked like that, right? But here like, yeah, here it's a bit detail here that we will have a look later. So if we want to access the elements based on this particular index here, then we should normally write data.lock. Okay, and if you want to access the elements based on the index, then data.ilock. Okay, then it would give you this particular first element here, but this we will discuss more in detail later. Okay, so this is how we can have a series object. Okay, build up a series object, or we can also do it using a Python dictionary, right? So if we do this here, then we get a series object. So next what we want to do is we want to understand Python data frame. So the data frame, you can think of it as multiple series. Okay, so it's better to explain it with an example. So let's continue with our player data set. So let's say first we write, let's say, the country dictionary. Okay, so here we make a dictionary where we write in the player name and the country which he plays for. So India, and then we have, let's say, Rohit, India, and then we have, let's say, Messi, and we have Argentina. Okay, so this is a dictionary where we have the player names and we have the country that they play for. Okay, so let's take one more from football. So let's say Sunil Chetri. Okay, and he also plays for India. Okay, so this is a dictionary. So country underscore dictionary, right? So this is our country dictionary, and then let's say we have one more where we specify which sport does that particular player plays. Okay, so sport underscore dictionary, and then again we have the same thing. So we have Virat, and then let's say he plays cricket, and we have Rohit, he also plays cricket, and we have Messi, plays football. We have Sunil Chetri, and he also plays football. Okay, so this is our another dictionary here. Okay, so earlier we had discussed if we want to make a pandas series object out of this dictionary, then what we can do is, let's say if we make this country, then we just do pd dot series, right? And then we just pass in the dictionary, right? So we get this particular series object here, right? And if we do the same with the other dictionary here, so pd dot series, and so it's better like you also keep on coding along with, so when you watch these videos, so you also keep on coding, writing these, so just pause the videos, write these codes yourself, and also keep trying out yourself, right? So we have this, so we have these two series object, right? So now what we want to do is we want to combine both of these. So what we want is, let's say index we want as Virat, Rohit, Messi, and in one column we want the country, and in the other column we want the sport that he plays, right? Then here what we can do is we can build our data frame. Okay, so let's say if I just write players, and now we have this data frame. Okay, pd dot data, and this capital F. Okay, capital D, capital F. So pd dot data frame, and then what we can do is we can again here pass in a dictionary. So what this dictionary does is, so we want to specify the column names. Okay, so the first column will be country, and the data which it will have is this, right? This series here, country. So let's say we just do country. Okay, and then the next column should be our sport, right? So we have the sport as the label, and it leads to this particular series here, right? So now if I do this players, so now what I get is, so if I check the type of this data here, so type of players, then we have a pandas data frame here. So the way it looks a bit confusing here, because I think I made a spelling mistake here. Yeah, so it should be Sunil Chetri, right? So we can again rerun these things. So now what we have is, so yeah, so we have a data frame here, and so what it did is, so this country was a Python series object, right? So if you just check the data type of type country, right? So this was a series object, right? This was a series object, and this sport, this was also a pandas series object. Okay, so what we did here was we combined these two pandas series object into one data frame. So we passed in a column name here. So this is the country and this is the sport, and it took the index. So we have Virat. So Virat, and for the country we have India. So we have India, and the sport is cricket. So we have cricket, Rohit, India cricket, Messi, Argentina football, Sunil Chetri, India football. Okay, so now this is a data frame. So data frame, you can think of it as a combination of series, right? So here, for example, let's say if I just want to access the country column, right? So players, let's say country. Now, if you just access this particular column here, then what you get is again a pandas series, right? So if you just check the data type of this particular thing, then it's a series, right? So one particular column here is a series, meaning that it's a list of indexed data. This is the index and this is the data. And again, for the sport, we have, so this is a series of, so this is a series, so this is a list of indexed data, right? And then when you combine multiple series, then you get what we call as a data frame, right? And data frame, you can just think of it as rows and columns. So rows are this index here, and the columns are, so we have this column names here, right? So again, for this data frame, so if I want to just check what are the index, then we can write players.index, and then we'll get list of all these index here. Okay, and there are now multiple things which we can do. So let's say we just want to list out all the columns, then we can just check players.columns. So these are the two columns which we have. Okay, and again, you can think of it as a dictionary as well. So let's say you want to access this particular column here, then we can write it as players and sport. Okay, so we get this series object here. Okay, so now whatever we have learned, so let's go back to our real world data set. So that was the Stack Overflow developer survey dataset, and then let's try to understand these data frames now in the context of whatever we have learned right now, right? So we have these two data frames here. So first, let's just check the type of these two objects, right? So type df, and let's say type schema underscore df, right? So these are our pandas data frames that we have, right? So these are data frame objects. So let's say we just do this df. So these are different rows, and these are different columns here which we have, right? And then we can have our schema underscore df, and these are the different columns which we have, and these are different rows. So now first let's have a look at, so what we said was, this data frame is just a combination of multiple series, right? So this is one series here, this one particular column, and this another column is one particular series here, right? So if I want to just access this column here, so let's say schema underscore df, and I just pass in the column name here, then I get this particular series here, right? So this series is just a list of data, and I have a list of index data, right? So this is the index associated with it. So if I just check the type of this particular data, then this is a pandas series object. Okay, similarly, if we just put in the other one, so the question text, and you can always press the tab to complete like whatever column name you're writing, right? So this is again a series object here, right? So these are multiple series, and then we combine them together to make a data frame. Similarly for this df, so let's say if I just access this particular column here, so hobbyist, so df, oops, hobbyist, right? So this again is a series, right? So type, and we have a pandas series, right? So this is what we can do, right? So this is just a basic understanding of what we have here, right? So from this video today, what we did was we just understood about the basic two data types on which pandas library is built upon. So we have the pandas series, so it's just a list of index data. So you have data and then index associated with it. So in our upcoming videos, we'll discuss more about this index, and then when we can combine and then if we combine multiple series into one, then we have something called as a data frame. And data frame, you can just think of it as rows and columns. Okay, and in our upcoming videos, we'll discuss more about this index object here, and also how do we access different elements and so on. So that will be in our upcoming videos. Okay, and my suggestion for you would be to download these data sets, and when you watch the videos, so keep on doing these things yourself as well. So just pause the video and then write in the codes and just play around yourself as well, because these are the things which you'll learn only when you do it yourself. Okay, so thank you very much and see you in the next video.